This is a story you'll definitely want to hear to the very end. My office on the 42nd floor is an aquarium of chrome and glass, hovering over the stone canyon of the avenue below. From here, the metropolis seems like an impersonal hive, an abstract schematic of other people's lives, which I observe from the height of my tranquility. My name is Dr. Arthur Vance, and I am an architect of souls. At least, that's what they say in circles where annual incomes are measured in seven figures. My clients are the titans of this city: politicians, financiers, media magnates. They come to me with their fears, their vices, and their weaknesses, and I give them what they want: the illusion of control. In reality, I don't heal, I collect. Every breakdown, every shameful desire, every crack in their armor is an exhibit in my private gallery. I catalog them, study them, and then I use them. A gentle suggestion here, a skillfully posed question there, and suddenly the right politician is lobbying for a useful bill, or a banker is making a risky investment that miraculously enriches one of my anonymous funds. This isn't therapy, it's a game. A perfect, clean, cold game of power that soothes that ancient itch left over from my youth. That day at the lake. No, we don't go there. Ever. Everything changed on Tuesday. A new name appeared on my schedule: Julian. He walked into the office with a disarming smile and a direct, clear gaze that seemed to penetrate the expensive walnut panels and the layers of my professional veneer. He was young, around 30, dressed simply but with impeccable taste. There was none of the arrogance of my usual patients, nor any trembling insecurity. He sat in the chair opposite me and began to speak. And from his first words, I knew he was different. He didn't complain, he reasoned. He spoke about the nature of anxiety, about social pressure, about the masks we wear. I tried to probe for his weak spots, to cast my standard hooks, to snag his ego, his fears. But he slipped away. He didn't just parry my questions, he reflected them back at me, but at such an angle that they wounded me instead. "I think I suffer from a lack of meaning, doctor," he said, tilting his head slightly. "Don't you find that in the modern world it's the most honest illness? All the others are just its symptoms." I tried to steer the conversation toward his childhood, his relationships. He allowed it, but did so in a way that made me feel not like the one leading, but the one being led. "Relationships are a dance of two mirrors, aren't they?" he mused, looking directly into my eyes. "We search for our reflection in the other, sometimes to admire it, and sometimes to convince ourselves that the ugliness we see doesn't belong to us. What reflection are you looking for, Dr. Vance?" In that moment, for the first time in 20 years of practice, I felt a prick of cold. Not fear, no. It was something else. Annoyance. The curiosity of a predator that has encountered an unknown species. There was nothing in his eyes but calm, analytical interest. He hadn't come for treatment. He had come to play. And to my horror and delight, I realized that for the first time in many years, a piece had appeared on my chessboard that played by its own unknown rules. The session ended. Julian left, leaving a ringing silence in the sterile air of my office, and a single question that now belonged not to him, but to me. The following weeks turned into a form of torture.
Our second session, our third, our fourth, they all resembled a sophisticated game of intellectual chess in which I was rapidly losing pieces. Julian spoke of guilt, of responsibility, of the secrets that become the foundation of a personality. He never spoke directly, never accused, but his every word was a perfectly calibrated projectile, striking the invisible wall I had spent 2 decades building around myself. He was dismantling me with the methodical precision of a surgeon and the curiosity of a child breaking an expensive toy.
I began to lose control. My flawless facade, honed by years of practice, started to crack. I wasn't sleeping well. The same nightmare returned to me night after night. The smell of silt, the cold, leaden water of the autumn lake. A scream cut short so suddenly, and the deafening silence that followed. I saw Leo's face, his surprised, frightened eyes in the very moment my hand pushed him. It was an accident, a stupid, boyish scuffle on slippery rocks near the cliff's edge. I panicked. I ran. They never found his body. No one ever knew. I buried Leo and that day so deep inside myself that I almost believed they had never existed. And now, Julian, without knowing it, was digging directly over that abandoned grave. "You know, Doctor," he said one day, watching the rain lash against the panoramic windows, "the most terrifying secret isn't the one we hide from others. It's the one we've convinced ourselves doesn't exist. We build a beautiful house on top of it, plant a garden, invite guests. But the foundation is rotten, and sooner or later, the house will collapse. Have you never been afraid of living in a house like that?" In that instant, my pen slipped from my fingers and hit the parquet floor with a dull thud. I felt cold sweat trickle down my spine. I looked up. Julian was watching me with the same calm, almost indifferent curiosity. He saw everything. He didn't know the facts, but he sensed the lie. He sensed the void at my very core. He saw the rotten foundation. My life outside the office began to spiral. I became irritable with my other patients. Their petty dramas seemed pathetic and boring. All my mental energy, all my predatory focus was now directed at one person. I tried to find out more about him. I hired a private investigator. The result was nothing. Julian Thorne had no past, no social media, no records, no credit history beyond the last year. He was a ghost, a phantom who had materialized out of thin air with the sole purpose of destroying me. This battle became my obsession. I realized that standard methods wouldn't work on him. To break him, I had to do something extraordinary. I had to go all in. And I made my decision. At our next session, I would use my most terrible weapon. I would reveal my ultimate secret. I would throw my sin, my truth, my confession in his face. I would bare my soul, hoping its ugliness would shock him, pierce his armor, and finally force him to react like a human being. This was a blow he couldn't possibly reflect. I would make him see me not as a puzzle, but as a monster, and in that, I would find my victory.
Dusk settled over the office. The rain drummed against the glass, creating the perfect soundtrack for a confession. I didn't let Julian begin. As soon as he sat down, I started talking. My voice was even, polished, but inside, everything was vibrating with tension. I was an actor on the stage of my life, performing my final, most important role. "Julian, I want to tell you a story," I began.
A story about two boys, a foolish argument on the edge of a cliff, and a single push. About a scream that still echoes in my ears. I want to tell you about the fear, the cowardice that made me run and stay silent. Silent for 20 years. I spoke. I left no detail. The cold wind, the slippery rocks, the surprise in Leo's eyes, the splash of water, the silence. I described how that fear and guilt became the fuel on which I built my entire life. How my method was just a desperate, twisted attempt to regain the control I had lost that day. I turned myself inside out, exposing the most rotten, shameful corner of my soul. I finished and fell silent, breathing heavily. My heart was pounding. I looked at him, expecting anything. Shock, disgust, pity, perhaps, even gloating. I was waiting for a reaction, for a crack in his impenetrable mask. Julian was silent for a long time, too long. The silence in the office became thick, viscous, almost physical. And then he smiled. Not the disarming smile from our first meeting. This was a strange, thin, chilling smirk. The smirk of a pathologist examining an interesting specimen. A crime, he said, his voice as calm as the sea after a storm. Doctor, what you did was a tragic mistake, a childish transgression poisoned with guilt. But what I did, now that is an art form. I froze, unable to process his words. You don't remember that day very well, Arthur, he continued, using my first name for the first time. His voice grew harder, colder. There was a scream, but it wasn't mine. It was yours when you realized I wasn't coming back up. A deep chill seized my body. I stared into his clear, calm eyes, and slowly, with creeping horror, I began to see familiar features in them. The features of the boy that I had believed to be dead for 20 years. Leo? I whispered, and the words sounded like a dry crackle.
That name died there in the icy water, he replied, along with fear, pain, and all the other sentimental nonsense. Your push didn't kill me. It woke me up. It burned everything superfluous out of me, all the humanity. I learned one simple thing. The world isn't ruled by strength or intelligence, but by an absence of weakness. And the greatest weakness is emotion. He slowly rose from his chair and walked to the window, standing with his back to me. I've watched you all these years, watched your brilliant career, and I became curious. I thought maybe that day had cured you, too. Maybe you had also learned the ultimate lesson and become a true predator. I didn't come for revenge. I came to find an equal, to conduct, shall we say, a final exam. He turned around. There was nothing in his eyes but cold, colorless disappointment. But you failed, Arthur. Your confession, your torment, your guilt, it's all so boring, so human. You're not a hunter. You're just a wounded animal, still whimpering over its old injury. My world, so meticulously constructed and controlled, crumbled into dust. My entire life, my game, my imagined omnipotence, it had all been a prelude to his experiment. I was never the player. I was a piece on his board. He sat back down in the chair opposite me, casually crossing one leg over the other as if he owned the place. And now, he said with that same horrifying analytical smile, that we've dealt with your childhood traumas, we can begin the real therapy. I'm going to show you what true control is, what real emotionless evil looks like. The session is just beginning, Dr. Vance.
If you enjoyed the story, subscribe to the channel, and you'll hear even more captivating tales.